Next up on the Firearms Inventors playing card deck is the Seven of Hearts, and that's Arthur William Savage, and his name describes his life to a T. This is someone who I had very little knowledge of when I started the project, or even the card today. We went live on the Gear Website's YouTube channel, and we were joined by Pink Panther from Ohio, Angelina from over in California, and Dead Horse from up in Utah, and we started to dig into some research. And Savage is a really interesting guy. He was born in 1857 in Jamaica. He went to school for a while in both the United States and England. Eventually got his way to Australia, where he started to experience life a little bit. Depending on which resource you read, he either was taken hostage by Aborigines or kind of hooked up with the Aborigines and lived out in the outback for a few years. In total, he spent 11 years in Australia. He ended up with, depending on which resource you read, one of the largest or the largest cattle ranch in Australia. He got married. He eventually had 8 children. At some point, he took the family from Australia back to Jamaica. Depending on what source you read, either had a coffee plantation or a banana plantation there. At some point, he decided the United States would be better, so he spent a year in England and then headed to New York, where he ran a railroad successfully. And while he was in England, I guess I stepped over it, he had put in a bid or a design for the English replacement for the Martini Henry, I think, and it was not accepted. So he was in New York working at the railroad and kept tinkering with his design. He invented a lever action along with Colt, and a couple of prototypes were given to the U.S. military. That was not accepted, so he kept tinkering with it. Eventually he came up with what would become the Savage Model 1892? 1895? Anyway, it had a rotary magazine, which turned out to be a good innovation because soon smokeless powder would hit the scene, and the relatively high power necked smokeless cartridges worked better in his tubular magazine, or his rotary magazine, than they did in the tubular magazine. So he had a successful gun, and he started Savage, started producing his Model 1895, and it was successful. He sold 4,000 of those guns, but he had those produced by Marlin at the Marlin factory. So in 1899, he modified the gun a little bit, crawled it the Model 1899, and moved production to the Savage factory, started production in the factory themselves. That gun went on to be in production for over 100 years, and Savage went on to be a very big player in the firearms industry. However, the man, Savage, decided to leave the gun business, headed to California to grow oranges, and eventually down to San Diego to race cars. He built some of the first 50 cars in the United States at the Savage factory. He ended up inventing the radial tire in 1915. So a really interesting guy, a lot of fun researching it and creating the card. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for everyone who's supporting the project and being part of the collaborative effort here. Till next time, thanks for watching.